Welcome, everyone. This is the panel for the diversity and accessibility track. Thank you for hanging with us, and thank you for being part of this important track. The headline of the panel today is basically how do we increase diversity in our company. So without further, I'll also briefly introduce myself. My name is Reza Rahman. I'm Principal Program Manager for Java on Azure in my day job. I'll be your moderator today. So do feel free to post your questions either on the chat or there is a Q&A control as well on Hopin. You feel free to make use of that Q&A panel also. But I do have a set of questions for the panel that I'll be asking in addition to the headline question, of course. So I think if it's okay, if everyone could just go around, and panelists, if you could introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. I'm Maria Augusta Torres. I work for IBM. I'm working there already for 33 years already. I started there as a student. Nowadays, I lead 4 different squads, a very diverse squad in terms of groups of people. I also co-lead group of neurodiverse team at country level. I would say that diversity inclusion is my personal passion, not because I live this in my daily work with the team I work with, but also in my family. I'm a mom, single mom of 3 triplets, 2 boys and autist daughter, lovely one. So I constantly tie with topics around diversity inclusion, not only the ones related to women group, but LGBT plus group, also neurodiversity team. Yesterday I was in a talk about diversity for the Portuguese speakers, and I'm continually in a touch point with these topics around. So back to you, Csilla.
Okay, so I continue then. So my name is Csilla, and I'm a software developer working with Java in the background and also with front-end technologies, basically web applications and data visualizations. And that's also a topic where if you are working with front-end technologies, then you just need to have to deal with accessibility issues too. So depending on where you are developing software, whether it's just for internal usage or for external or publicly on the internet. So you also have to comply with some regulatory regulations, so legal regulations. So those are very interesting topics. And on the other side, I think diversity and inclusion is the other topic, which is very important, and we need to talk about it even more. And it's also an important topic for me as being a woman and seeing a few things from another perspective, maybe. Because I am in a field of in a technology field, you know, and women are usually underrepresented in this field, generally in STEM areas, I can see. So not only technology, but also science, engineering, and mathematics. So I think it's important to talk about it. Yeah.
That's for sure. So,
Felipe, did you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. I was lost in the wind. So you guys, welcome. I'm Felipe Oliveira. I'm work as an agile expert and founder of a company called Mindset Agile. I'm not part of any specific group of diversity or accessibility, although my wife has experienced neurodiversity aspects. So she's a bipolar person. So it's interesting to be part of this kind of discussion because I actually experience those things at home, and ever since she discovered it, it's been a new perspective and a new way of seeing that. I'm also part of a community called in Brazil, in Portuguese we call Jornada Colaborativa, which means collaborative journey. We write books and donate money to institutions. And we have already launched close to 12 books. You can see a few here. So we talked about DevOps and leadership and HR and several other things. And I like to pretend I play drums on my free time. So.
All right, thank you. So let's get started. We're relatively short on time. I'll try to keep us on time. So let's get started with the headline question. If you don't mind sharing your sort of more high-level thoughts, and then we can obviously dig a bit deeper into the topic. So, what's your thoughts on the question? Like, how do you increase diversity in your company? What have you seen being done? You know, what are the if you will the top things that you would recommend to increase diversity in any company or team?
Mm-hmm.
I can start. As I mentioned, I try to touch as many aspects on diversity as possible, which means that I do want to have a balance of women working in the team, people from LGBT plus working on a team, Afro descendants working on a team, and things like that, which is a kind of crazy, because imagine that we plan to touch all kind of diversity aspects, but at least we tried. What we as an action, what in my daily job, what we really do is to work with the team as currently on, to guarantee that we have a representation of all aspects. So if we want to manage, for example, cross-cultural topics, we must have people from different cultures. If you want to reach topics regarding races, we must have people from Afro descendants in the team. So what we usually do is that by the time that we have a new hiring, we try to focus this new hiring on the aspects to create this environment, an environment that will be able to accept any, let's say, minor representation. I really don't like the minor one, because the minor, it seems that we are talking about a small number of people, but that's the large number of people around. For example, on neurodiversity, we are talking about 85% of people unemployed. But if every time that we have a new hiring and we focus on neurodiversity only, we will be creating a new kind of not inclusion. So it's hard, but needs assertive actions from the time of hiring, but the time of the daily by day activities itself. Not sure, Celia, if you want to comment on that or answer.
Csilla?
Csilla?
Yes, so what I can add diversity and how you can bring in diversity into your company. I think in Switzerland we are in a specific, very special situation too, because there are many aspects of it, diversity. So it's not just gender, men or women or whoever. It's not just about generations, old people and young people, and a combination of all those people, but it's also something about language diversity, because we have got 4 official languages, so German, French, Italian, and Retro-Romanic, and all 4 are official languages. And what we try to achieve also in my company, it's a representation based on the percentage in the country. So from all over the country that we achieve this representation, so that no one feels him or herself underrepresented. So in my company, for example, at hiring process, this is one of the criteria to look at it, whether this is achieved or not. So this is also a specific kind of diversity. And also another aspect is we have got different cultures. So not only those language diversity, but we also have got a lot of people from outside of the country, so who migrated to the country, and they all bring in another culture, another language, and it is also our responsibility somewhere to try to include those people and try to look at it, and during the hiring process trying to also include those people and recognize them. And of course, fifth aspect what we have here is also trying to involve people with disabilities. And this could be a difficult subject, maybe how we can achieve that, hiring those people, how we can reach out to them. So this is one of the challenges. But I think it's everywhere more or less the same. Yeah.
Well, Brazil is kind of in a few perspectives, kind of an easy thing to talk about when I talk about diversity, because we have several origins. We don't have that level of diversity when we're talking about languages. We use mainly Portuguese, but when we're talking about ethnicity or religion and social economy perspective and LGBTQIA plus, we have those kinds of diversity segments in the population. So it's kind of an easy thing to talk about. We have lots of, and it's quite visible, it's quite apparent, but in a certain way it's a delicate subject, because people think that there is no prejudice, or people that don't actually experience it think that there is no prejudice, think that there are no issues, or there is no diversity and accessibility problems in the company. I think that's something to discuss in companies nowadays, to notice that if you're talking about diversity and accessibility, is not actually acting on it. Right? If you're talking about, I've seen companies talking about diversity months for months, and they didn't actually publish anything and to people who say, hey, we are hiring only women right now, or only Afro-descendants, or only LGBT community people. So it's easier to said than done, but we should actually do it, not just talk about it. And then that's something that I've noticed that lots of companies are doing. They are talking about it, but not actually doing it. And there's a simple reason for that, right? It's the hype. Everybody's talking about it, so let me talk about it too. But it's just a shell, so we have to take action.
All right, so beginning to talk about taking action, aside from simply talking about the concepts and the problems. As we know, all of this has two different flip sides. There is the diversity angle, and then there's the inclusion angle. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get your thoughts on the diversity angle first. So let's talk about recruiting and hiring. What are some specific things that somebody out there should be thinking about in terms of hiring and recruiting for the purposes of advancing diversity? What have you seen? What are the kind of things that you've seen? What are the kind of things that you think people should be thinking about?
You want to start this time, Csilla? Just to back and forth between.
Okay. I can start with it. I'm in a very special situation because I'm working for a company, for an institute, which is belongs to the federal administration, and as such, we are probably a little bit more aware of the problem, and we have also to comply with legal requirements of non-discrimination, and we also have the role to act as a role model. So I've just asked our HR what are the practices, what we have in place, how does it work actually, and they explained me few things that I didn't know before. That in our company we have got quotes. They introduced quotes during the hiring process. So there are quotes: how many women we should hire, how many women should be in a higher position. Also, what about languages? And those numbers, they try to achieve those numbers. And but sometimes it can be more difficult. For example, in a field of technology, to find people, to find women. And also there is another problem that we cannot just say we would like to hire only women, because this would be also kind of discrimination. So there is we have to formulate a little bit in another way. So we can say, for example, in our organization unit, women are underrepresented, so applications from women are very welcome. So this is one kind of formulation what we can practice. And also what strategy they have during this hiring process. The HR is always accompanying the actual hiring process actively, because they know the regulations, and so they can help the technical persons who make the interview, actually, to help them to also respect those kind of things. And but this is only one thing, how we can hire all those people. And the other thing is how we can keep them so that they don't leave the company after a certain amount of time. And there can be other measures as well, for example, education of superior or superior persons. This is one important thing, that they try to educate how they can just talk about problems if there are any problems, so how they will be more open to problems and to solve it, if there are any. So those are all measures, what you can imagine, but and we also try to hire not only young people, but also elder people. But I have to say that we are in the situation when we belong to a federal administration, and we have got maybe more opportunities to do this. But if you are if you have a company, a smaller company in a private field, then you have got just more concurrence and maybe less financial means to achieve this. So it's also depending on whether you are in a small company or a bigger company, I guess.
Yeah, Csilla, when at your talk, I capture a very similar point, which is how to do not be or to create a discrimination when we will focus just at one group of people. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
We talk this position as just for women. We are doing somehow a discrimination for
Yes.
all the other ones, and we cannot do this, right? So it's a kind of balance. I fully agree. What we also do here at country level that may support it, if we figure out that, for example, the people we are looking for, there's no right skill already for the position, we try to reach some groups. And for example, for ladies, we do have a lot of groups for young ladies to provide them in advance the necessary education. And this will let her or let them ready in a better position to apply for this position when they happens. So it's quite useful to go to this group of young ladies, prepare them with Python, all languages that will be necessary for the position. Later on, when we have the hiring process itself, they will be in the exact point that will be necessary. So it's a kind of strategy that we can do in advance to support some groups. For neurodiverse, let me give you a second example.
Okay.
For neurodiverse team, we do have a company that also support a training for, I think it's about 5 months, to provide them some social skills around how would be the expected behavior in a corporate such this one. And they start to be more comfortable to go to an interview, how to prepare a curriculum, a set of not only hard skills, but some soft skills to let this, let's say again, the minority team in a better position to stay in equality level with the other ones. I think this all about by the end in terms of equality aspects. We do have, for example, also in company some student cycles that we do just for ladies. So we sure that, let's say, the group that studies that will start in January, they will be just for ladies. So we have a hiring process for students, and then we hope to get them more prepared for a position, So it's a kind of strategy to start working in advance with the people, That's the way out
Okay.
we have as a workaround.
Well, I want to talk about the hiring, recruitment process, and practices. There is always the first step, which is awareness, right? So leadership and companies need to create that kind of awareness to what the problem is, or are the main issues, and what kind of criteria they should use to hiring people. For example, and during my talk, I spoke about not exactly treating people with equality, but equity. And there's a reason for that, because sometimes people need different criteria. Sometimes people that had less access to information and to education should be presented with different criteria to enter a company than with a person that had access to that. So I think that the first main subject will be awareness, to teach people, to teach the leadership, to teach everyone in the company on how to react, or how to act, or how to help people with disabilities or people with neurodiversity issues. For example, if you are a bipolar person, or if you have some kind of the spectrum of autism, you might lash out. If you have some kind of a stressor in your environment, you might kind of lose your mind, and that's part of the issue, right? And how can you be a calm person to go there and talk to the person and help that person to be calmer, and another aspect is little things. For example, I worked as an agile coordinator, and when I published the job opportunity, when I offered people, I always put a little message, and that said, I prefer women for this position. It's a simple thing. You just write there, need women, or I want Afro descendants, and I want neurodiverse. You can do that. It's not, and if the company forbids you for doing that, you're in the wrong company. Right? And of course, you can be much more supportive. The company can support those kind of things with social media and stuff. But you, as a leader, as a person, you can actually publish and post it on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. Hey, I have this job offer here, but I would like women to come and talk to us. Not just everybody, just women, or just Afro-descendant women, or just neurodiverse, or just LGBTQ people, to show them what are the opportunities, what are the possibilities. We just attended to Grace's talk, right, about opportunities to women in technology, and to show them that it is possible. It's a great deal. It's a very big deal, because some of those people might actually think that they don't deserve that, or they are not capable of that. They don't have the intelligence. No, I'm not prepared for that. I'm not that smart. And it's just about knowing the possibility and knowing the opportunity they have.
Okay, so flipping forward to the next side of the action coin, if you will. So we talked about hiring and recruitment and so on, and we touched a little bit upon retention. So let's talk about more about the inclusion side of the coin. So what are the kind of things that you do when you do have let's say you have managed to have a diverse workforce, you've done your homework, you did the right things to have a diverse workforce. How do you retain that diverse workforce? So how do you make sure they're empowered and enabled, and they work in a fair and nice environment, number one. Number two, how do you ensure representation at all levels, including all the way up to the leadership levels? What are the practices there?
Well, just following Maria's suggestion, I'll start then. Well, I think that there are several ways to follow to represent people, right? I think the easier way, but it's not so easy at all, because it is to have people that are part of diversity communities. So you would have an Afro-descendant CEO. You would have a gay man or a gay woman or a LGBTQ community person in the top level of the company, in the C level, right? That's an easy way, because you have that representation. They have all the diversity representation in them. And it's not that easy, because we would have to hire those people, and we need those positions. And that's a difficult thing. But that doesn't stop you from creating, events for webinars and for bringing people together to talk about it, to teach people, to bring, I don't know, people like the ones that we are seeing here today, to just sit down and try to have a conversation about that subject and how to act and how to behave in those situations. So that's one thing to be part of, and I've talked about inclusion as well, right? And inclusion is mostly when we are when the person feels that she or he has or they have their representation. It's not about how the company sees it; it's about how the person sees it. And we need to try and measure that. We need to try to have a conversation with these people and try to establish what is inclusion to them. And notice how they interact, their routine, kind of treat that person as a client, right? And to understand their behavior and the behavior of the environment surrounding them, so we can provide the best resources and the best possibilities, so they can experience the same things, the same information, and also they can be treated as equals in that society.
It's interesting that on the previous question we talked more about opportunity, and now we are talking the answer drivers more for the actions behind what the person does with this opportunity. And to have this true inclusion, in my mind, comes to give a voice, which is more or less the same what Felipe just mentioned, but we should give the opportunity, give this team the voice to talk about themselves. I will share a real situation that we had a few weeks ago. We usually talk about diversity and inclusion. It's a common sense that the diversity and inclusion is the right to do, but what else? What else can we do? So one of the employees that work in my team, he is blind. He was invited not to talk about diversity inclusion, which is our daily business as usual. We usually talk a lot of diversity and inclusion. He was invited to give a talk on Java, and he was so excited because he was invited to talk about his competence, not about his difficulties, these gaps. So that, I think that's the inclusion is about. We open a space to the team to talk about what they can do, not about what they need or in adaptation. This is a must to talk about, but we have to give them open space to talk about her talents or their talents, And he was very proud on a Java speaker. He was absolutely tired to talk about the diversity inclusion, what's the accessibility the blind people need, what tools they use. This is the daily invitations they receive. But by the time he was invited to talk about a technical speak, that's what's the difference make. So my 2 cents on this will be to open opportunities to share all the talents around the people that we want to include. If we wanted to include someone, he or she wants just to be like anyone else and give this real opportunity to share his or her talents. That's my guess. Jump to you, Csilla.
Yes, I can. My opinion is similar to you, Maria and Felipe, and I think that's also important to create an open climate within the company, that you dare to ask questions, you dare to do this or do that, and really that people appreciate your work, and you just feel that. And it's also about probably you also have need to have some kind of education for bosses or superior, so that they create a climate where the people they are not afraid of speaking or talking about problems or talking about their fears. And also maybe just to avoid somehow to be isolated. This, for example, also in scientific context or in research areas, many researchers, female researchers, they feel somehow isolated among all the men who are around, and that's why there have been. I heard about some programs that they try to address this issue, how you can get rid of this isolation more, and they just made some experience on how they can, for example, group women together so that they are in some kind of community within the company, for example, and if they feel that they belong to somewhere, then they are more strong or more daring. So this is also a kind of organization change, what can be helpful in this case, so that people do not feel isolated, whether you are a woman or belong to another minority or whoever you are. That if you feel that you belong to somewhere, people give you this feeling, then this can also make a difference.
Reza, can I add something here?
Please, yeah.
There was something that Maria talked just now about a person that was from her team, right, Maria? And he, it's a he, right?
In that example is he.
Okay. He said that he was excited to talk about anything other than diversity, right? And
Yes.
that's interesting because it's not because you're part of a diverse community or a diverse segment of the population that you were a specialist on the subject. It's not because you're Afro-descendant or you're a gay man or a woman or you're a transgender that you are an expert in talking about diversity. You're just part of that group. Yeah. That's interesting because people start talking, oh, and how is that? I don't know. I'm just a software developer, or I'm just a project manager, or I'm just in architecture. You know?
Yeah, and it's very interesting because Csilla mentioned she is a front developer. His colleague, he also is a front developer, and he's blind. He's a kind of amazing. He's a great developer. So we must create this opportunity for these technical talents. That's the way we are including, not just only talking about the theory of inclusion, you know?
Yeah. Great.
All right. So clearly, a lot of the things that we talked about in terms of diversity and inclusion ultimately comes down to broader company level cultures and procedures and management practices and so on. And a lot of it, in fact, is top down. But let's say you do care about these issues and you're not an individual that is in management or in a position to be defining company policies or HR policies and so on. What are the things that you as an individual then can do in order to advance diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I think it's my turn to start, right? So I use it to practice the why not, and knock on the door of the right people and ask them why not. They said we will not have, let's say, a woman on this position. Knocked on the door. Why not? What's the gap around? Oh, the gap is we are not able to figure them. Oh, are you looking at the right point, the right space? Because let me give you an example. I had an experience with the neurodiverse team. They went to a formal space of employment where absolutely the neurodiverse team were not. They will never figure out anyone there. So maybe if we knock on the door the right person and question them, the why not, open the mind, you know, maybe we will receive a no, but the no we already have, right? So, but maybe we will let the other person to start thinking about why not. We just have a comment on our chat about the conference prize, and there's no women there. And my first thought is, why not? Next time, let's stay together and go there and ask the why not. Maybe we are looking at the minimum area. We may invite someone other areas to join us, but there's no easy answer to this question, Risa. Sorry, but I think we have to knock on the door of the many people. Be the boring one. I will bore you knocking on the door asking a why not question. That's my guess.
Right.
Yes, so try again and again.
Yes.
Exactly, yes. That's also my thought, that if you have an idea or initiative, just do not wait for anyone, for approval. Just go ahead and try talk about it. Or yes, that's one of the way you can try to do something. And also talking about it, yes. But I think there are also you want to change, or you have to change your thinking about it. So how you see things, and there are also very lot of stereotypes about different roles or men or women, and you just need to talk about it. When I came here to Switzerland, for example, it was something not understandable for other people that I am in a technology field. as a software developer, and people were asking me, I'm doing a man's job. So there are some stereotypes in heads that do exist, even in highly developed countries, and we also need to address those. And maybe think about it. Yes, for me, it's a totally natural, totally normal thing to be part of it. But maybe for you, it's a less normal thing. And just try to talk about it and listen to other people's opinion, and maybe with some kind of argumentation, you can just change something.
Well, I think that prejudice and those kinds of behaviors, people experience them depending on cultural aspects and where they came from. So maybe a Brazilian person can see and experience racism in a different way than a person that comes from Africa or from China, right? And I think each individual, they have those different feelings about it. So I think that the first thing that a person, an individual that's not part of management positions or leadership positions, they have to know what are their perspectives and their feelings about it. They have to acquire knowledge about it. They have to know what they are talking about and how to talk about it, and to know that these are people that probably didn't get the same opportunities or the same advantages or the same interactions that they had. So I think self-awareness is the first thing. The second one, I think, as Maria said, we already have a no for a no for an answer. Let's just go for humiliation. So, and what I mean is, you can influence people. You are a person in your company, you can influence people. And there are people in management position that you can influence, that you can talk to them, you can convince them to actually take action. So I think we have to bring urgency to the matter. You have to bring numbers. You have to bring to the table stuff that can prove and then can put a light on these kind of subjects, and kind of acquire coalitions, allies, people that you can influence and convince and to act on it. So if you have, for example, a good relationship with your director, talk with him or with her or with they, and talk and have a conversation and approach that subject and convince them to help you with that initiative. And you can use, for example, an MVP. An initiative has an MVP. Oh, let's bring a talk about that, a webinar, and see what happens. Let's bring a person from outside of the company that's part of that community, it's part of accessibility communities, and just talk about it, and let's see what happens. If one person shows up, that's great. If 10 people shows up, that's great. And 100 people shows up, that's great. So I think making friends and convincing people what is the best thing to do, it's quite a nice action to do.
All right. So let's say you've done all that, right? And you've done your homework. You're convinced this is the right thing to do, and you're going to go ahead and do it. And let's even pretend that you're the CEO of the company. So the next question is, how do you start the dialogue? Because we all, for some of us, we work for IBM or Microsoft. These are companies where the leadership already does these things, or you work for a government organization like Csilla does, and it's a legal requirement to be dealing with these things. But let's pretend for a moment that you're in an environment where the leadership hasn't started this conversation yet. There's no legal requirement to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the environment may actually be hostile to bringing any of these topics or bringing up any of these topics. What are some strategies to begin the dialogue? And even more specifically, let's say you've observed a specific problem with regards to diversity and inclusion, whether that's accessibility or hiring, recruitment, what have you. How do you begin that conversation? What are some examples that you've seen, and what are some strategies you can follow or recommend other people do to begin the dialogue or sometime begin a very difficult conversation?
Let me just say that Reza he's challenging us with these questions. Well, can I have the saying here? Well, it's a tricky question, right? I've watched a video from a guy that has a company called Nas Daily. It's a Facebook page that they post about diversity and technology and lots of stuff. And they presented about the Theseus Paradox, right? If you have a big ship and you change all the parts of the ship, it's the same. If you look at it, it looks the same ship because all the parts are equal to another. They are the same parts, that's just new ones. So if you have a ship and you change the parts for new ones, and there will be a time that all the parts are new. Is that the same ship, or is there a different ship? And some people would say there's a different ship because they are new parts, and some people might say they're the same ship because it's the same thing. You can see it. It is the same object, the same kind of parts, but they are new. So when we kind of talk about a company, it's kind of the same perspective. Because if you change all the people from the company, is the same company or is a different company? Some people would say that it is the same company because a company is made by its values. So when we talk about diversity, we're talking about values, and we're talking about principles and how we want to live our lives. So I think a simple way to start a conversation is with values. What are the values that our company stands for? If your company stands for respect, in universal perspective of respect and inclusion, you have a quick start to talk about it. So values, I think it's a right tool to talk about diversity. Csilla, Maria.
Yes, that's an interesting question. And I already know, yes, if you have got some kind of problem and you don't know who to ask, or you don't get any support in your environment or in your team, and not even from your boss, or what you can do with these questions. Well, you can even try to go to HR, or maybe you are in a bigger company where there's a diversity office, and then you can knock on the door and then ask them, well, this is the situation, how can you help us? So this is what I have seen at some companies, that there's one possibility to address problems. Well,
it's tricky, right?
Yes. Which company? Yes.
Yeah.
Good question.
The only comment to add is that I hope after this pandemic time, all this is changing somehow, including this aspect, as you know, because all this timing, every one of us are impacted by the human beings as we are, you know. So hopefully this also impact everyone at any kind of company, the small ones, the early bird ones just started after pandemic, and the large ones, because it's quite of easy to go on this direction, to follow a rule or a legal mandate. But when you drive on this direction from a mindset, that's when this really changes, you know. So if we as human beings are somehow changing, we would have more hope on this reason. It's tricky. No.
All right, so we are just about winding down. So I'll start. I'll end with a couple of last questions. I'll give you a heads up on what those questions are, and then by that time, I really do hope we don't have a large audience. Unfortunately, I wish that wasn't the case. But those of you who are in the audience, please, this is your sort of last opportunity to ask questions that are on your mind. You have 4 people here that actually genuinely care about this topic. Maybe we can give you some answers to questions that you might have. So a couple of questions that I have to wrap this up, and then I think we should call it a day here. So where do you learn more? People have attended this panel. Hopefully, they've attended a few of the sessions here in the diversity and accessibility track, and hopefully there'll be a few more in the afternoon. But after doing all that, where do you go to learn more about it? What are some books? What are some websites? What are some people or good speakers that you would recommend on this topic so that people can learn more? And after you answer that, I'd like you to finish with sort of your unique thoughts, your closing thoughts on any of this stuff, and sort of share whatever it is that you'd like to share, or maybe even pose a question of your own that maybe we can all try to answer also. So with that, I think let me stop here and then hand it over to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I will start this. It's a really personal opinion. I already have the time of reading a lot of books. I already have the time of watching a lot of panels and lives. But nowadays, what I enjoy most is to be at moments like this one, where we are able to share real experience. Because somehow in my mind, we jump from theory scenario to touch real situations, real cases. After this talk, for example, I know more about what is happening in Switzerland that I didn't know before. So this creates me a better view in terms of world level subject, instead to talk about what is happening on Brazil or a company locally. So in my view, what helps me more is to talk about the team, like I'm talking with you, or talking with the audience, or receive a single question in a LinkedIn in a daily basis. This is my choice. Go to the real scenarios,
You've stolen my answer.
Oh, sorry. So let's cross your fingers. Sheila have a different answer, right?
I have a different answer. Yes, somewhat different answer. Yes, I don't have any specific books or internet sites, but I can recommend you, because there are a lot of articles on this. There's a lot of research going on, so you have really plenty of sources when you can inform yourself. I just have a film tip. Maybe I saw it 1 or 2 years ago. You might know it. It's called Hidden Figures. So it's a film about Black women from that time who were involved in trying to win the space race at that time, and they were Afro-American women. And I think this film is worth seeing it. This very interesting film, also with some kind of humor. So it is not just that dry film illustrating something. So this is something I would recommend all of you and all of the audience, if you don't know it, but probably you already heard about it.
That's a great suggestion. I've noticed. I think that most countries change the original name of movies to interact more with the public, right? So I've just looked at it, and it's a wonderful movie. And I think that if you want to learn about, for example, accessibility, you have to go where the problems are. You have to know where what the companies are doing. Microsoft, for example, is a great example for looking for accessibility technology. IBM, as we've seen earlier today. And about books, well, I don't have a specific book that I can suggest. I know of Simone de Beauvoir that talked about feminism years back. And it's quite renowned author about feminism, and I think that we have to address this kind of subjects when we want to learn in a more qualified perspective, not just over opinion. I think we all have different experiences about accessibility and diversity, but if you want to tackle that kind of subject, go for sociologists, go for psychologists, people that actually have, for example, studies and books and articles, scientific articles about that can bring very good help. And participate of some things. For example, watch RuPaul and feel the energy, feel the things that are happening with them, and what is so important to them to do that, what that it represents to them. I think that's for some maybe a silly thing to say, but for example, my wife, she adores watching RuPaul. For those who don't know what RuPaul is, he's an artist and a drag queen in US, and he kind of promotes several kind of reality shows about drag queens. So it's very interesting, and it's very funny too. So I invite you to join that. And finally, I want to talk about, for example, stuff like racism. I think that Hidden Figures it's a good suggestion, and also The Color Purple is a great movie and a great book. So if you want to know about racism and sexism, it's a very potent, it's a very, very strong movie to watch, and you can see that even with Afro-descendant people, there is racism, right? There is submission, there is disrespect. So it's a very touching kind of movie, because you can see what happened and what's still happening sometimes.
So I'll add my 2 cents to these last 2 questions. There's 2 books that I think for anyone that is serious about diversity and inclusion issues, it's almost a must read. And these are old books, believe it or not. These are books that have been around for some time and sort of have gained popularity because of Me Too and BLM. So the first one I'd recommend is How to Be an Anti-Racist. It's by Ibrahim Kendi. It's an excellent book. It talks beyond simply ideas, but actually how you do that at the societal and individual level. So this talks about strategies and specific policy recommendations of what you can do to actually bring about equity and hopefully one day equality as well. The other book that, especially for somebody who is not from a marginalized background, that is important to read is White Fragility. And this book talks a lot about necessary discomfort in confronting and overcoming these issues and really beginning to have these uncomfortable conversations and how to get comfortable with having these uncomfortable conversations. So those are 2 very good books. I certainly, when I read them, it was like, and BLM happened and Me Too happened, and it was just like, okay, people have been talking about this for a little while. Where have you been? Kind of moment. Another one that I read in very early in my teen years. So it's almost a 20-year-old book. It's by a Palestinian Christian. And I don't know if you guys have seen my T-shirt. I'll show you my T-shirt. So this is a book called Orientalism. Okay, so this is by somebody that I really respect quite a bit. And to me, it was an eye-opener back in my teen years. So I definitely recommend, definitely those books for people that want to learn more about diversity and inclusion issues. I think, those, as I said, I think those are absolutely musts. So, okay, so let's move on to the last question. Right? Pardon?
It's from Edward Said, right?
Edward Said, yes. Yep.
I'm sending people the books. Great.
Right, so let's finish up with our closing thoughts, right?
Sure thing. Well, you guys, I think that this was an incredible conversation, and thank you everyone that are watching us right now, talking about it. I think, of course, and taking action brings more result than talking about it, but also talking about it brings awareness. So try, everyone that is watching us right now, try to talk about these things with the people surrounding you. Try to see the world as they see, or listen the world as they listen, or to engage those subjects as they would engage. And as I think as Reza said, reading about it, it's very important, so you can know how to act, how to talk about it, how to approach people and these kind of subjects. So I think it's some kind of game changer, changing subject that we're doing here right now. It's very interesting. It's very good that we're talking about it, and I appreciate it.
Great time. Thank you so much. We can stay in touch through the social media, LinkedIn, whatever.
Yes.
I would also like to thank, and it was a very interesting conversation for me too, to learn more about this subject, to open also a bit open eyes, I guess. And what I just can say that continue with this conversation wherever you are, and try discuss these themes with others, with your colleagues, wherever you are, just to raise awareness. And so I like this very much.
All right, so I'll finish up, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for those of you in the audience. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and I hope you got something out of our time here. Closing thoughts from my standpoint. It's interesting. We live in a very sort of schizophrenic industry. In some way, we have this image of ourselves as very liberal, very open, and very global people. But when you look at the numbers and when you look at the reality is very different. Right? We're one of the least diverse, and the things that we produce impact the people that need the most help the least. So it is way overdue for us to begin to have these conversations and figure out how can we actually make technology work for everyone. So I'm very happy that TDC is doing this. For me in the Java space, the reason I'm really happy about this is because there are other parts of the technology ecosystem that are way ahead of Java in particular. Right? So if you look at Python and Ruby, they figured this stuff out for a long time ago. And in the Java ecosystem, we're such a huge ecosystem that has such a huge economic footprint, and yet we don't really deal with these issues at all. So it's a really, again, this weird sort of schizophrenic state that we're in. So I do hope that the small audience that we have, and the dedicated people that care about this particular track goes somewhere. Is the beginning of something, and not simply just a fad or sort of a drop in the ocean. Flash in the pan happens and then everybody forgets about it. I hope that's not the case. So with that, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and stick around for the rest of our sessions for the afternoon.